So I have a quick question to ask you. Have you ever thought about starting a reading habit? Or maybe you're a once in every blue moon type of reader, but you want to be more consistent and maintain a reading habit. Or maybe you're an avid reader, but you're interested in having a more intentional and fulfilling reading life. Does that sound like you? If any of those scenarios sound like you in even the slightest, I want to invite you to take the What's Your Reader Type quiz. It will only take 60 seconds of your time and you'll discover your reader type. But most importantly, you'll get the resources you need to start reading, maintain the habit, and get intentional. So visit readertypequiz.com. That's readertypequiz.com. It will only take you 60 seconds and you'll discover your reader type and get the resources you need. So whether you're an aspiring or avid reader, go to readertypequiz.com, spend 60 seconds and take the quiz that will help you get clear on where you are right now and what you need to do to live your best reading and literary life yet. Hello. I'm Victoria from Biblio Lifestyle, and you're listening to the Reader's Couch podcast, the show that will help you bridge the gap between living a full and busy life to one where you're reading, learning new things, and having fun. In today's episode, I'm super excited to be sharing my personal top 10 books of 2022. So if you're looking to add more books to your TBR, stay tuned. Get ready to be transported to the Mediterranean this winter when you add The Seamstress of Sardinia by Bianca Pizzorno to your reading list. The Seamstress of Sardinia is a dramedy of manners, family, romance, and fashion that is set in the end of the 19th century on the island of Sardinia. In the novel, we meet a talented seamstress, and it's through her eyes we see the flawed yet affable residents of this small Italian city, who are not quite what they pretend to be. There are love affairs and broken hearts, and even a murder. Or was it suicide? But at the center of it all, watching and waiting, is the seamstress herself, an intelligent, ambitious girl with a tender heart and her own impossible dream. The Seamstress of Sardinia is being published by Harper Perennial, and it's an atmospheric, rich, detailed period piece with compelling characters you really don't want to miss. Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Reader's Couch podcast. Today, I'm super excited to be sharing my personal top 10 books of 2022. So last year, I did a top 10 books series on the podcast where I invited some wonderful readers to come on the show and share their top 10 books of the year. So if you haven't already, go back and listen to those episodes. It's a 6-part series, and the first 5, I invited readers to come on the show and share their top 10 books. And in part 6, I share my top 10 books of 2021. It was really fun doing that series, and I'm kind of making plans to bring something like that back in 2023, and I'm really excited about it. We have a whole year to read and plan on that, but I really enjoyed what I did in 21, and I'm looking forward to bringing that back. So again, if you haven't already, go back and listen to those episodes. Your TBR will topple. So today's episode is about my personal top 10 books. And the reason I say personal is because if you're subscribed to Biblio Lifestyle, which is my weekly newsletter, and if you aren't subscribed, what are you doing? Come on, head on over to bibliolifestyle.com and subscribe. I absolutely love putting together the weekly newsletter. It's so much fun. You'll find BOOKLIST, reading tips, recipes, lit facts, just fun inspiration, reading quotes. I think it's just a newsletter filled with a roundup of all things bookish and literary. So again, if you haven't already, head on over to bibliolifestyle.com to subscribe. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you are subscribed to that newsletter and you get it in your inbox every Friday, you would have noticed that I've shared a top 10 fiction book list and non-fiction book list for Biblio Lifestyle. So I've done 2 top 10 book lists, one for fiction, one for non-fiction already. So the disclaimer for this podcast episode is, unlike those top 10 book lists that I made for Biblio Lifestyle, these books are my personal favorites, okay? Because what these books that I'm about to share, what they did for me was they provided a really great reading experience. I either found it to be super relatable, enjoyable, memorable, or just really entertaining. And I've had quite a few entertaining books this year that I absolutely loved. But also, in the same breath, you might see some overlaps with the books from Biblio Lifestyle's top 10 that I'll be sharing here as well. And that can only be expected because I create content for the blog, for the website, for the newsletter, and I obviously create this podcast too. So because I curate everything, you'll see some overlap. So anyway, I think that's enough disclaimers, enough housekeeping. I'm really excited to get into the books. So my top 10 books are all fiction because at my core, I'm a lover of all things fiction. I really am. I do think reading fiction is just as important as reading some non-fiction, documentary, biography, memoir, life-changing book, you know? Fiction's really important. So I'll be sharing 10 books. They're all fiction. And while I'll be counting from 1 to 10, these books are not ranked, okay? I'm sharing them in order of publication date. It was already hard enough selecting 10 books. So these are just 10 books and I'm sharing them with you in order of publication. All right, let's go. So book 1 on my top 10 books of 2022 is Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. Now, this book was published February 1st, 2022. And if you subscribe to the newsletter, if you keep up with my reading guides, this was one of my literary fiction selections in the Winter 2022 reading guide. So again, all roads lead to the newsletter, right? So anyway, Vladimir, it's a literary campus novel, and in the book we meet our narrator, and it's an unnamed narrator, and she is a tenured professor at an upstate New York college. She's an English professor. And she starts the fall semester with a scandal over her head. But it's not really her scandal, it's her husband's. And her husband is also a professor at the school, and he's being accused of sexual misconduct by 5 students. Now, during all this, her husband is being placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. And, you know, during all of that, she's facing a lot of criticism. She's being criticized by her colleagues. She's being criticized by her daughter. She has an adult daughter. And, you know, they're all criticizing her and holding her accountable for her husband's behavior. They're basically saying she's been complicit in his bad deeds, you know. But then, right, out of nowhere, she finds herself, well, not really out of nowhere, but she then finds herself obsessed with a new hire. His name is Vladimir. He's a novelist. He's new to town, and he's come to town with his wife, who's also a writer, and they also have a young daughter. So she is obsessed with this man. It's a bit of a sexual obsession, and we watch our narrator kind of spiral. We see her wanting to relive her youth. She wants to revive her writing because her writing has gone stagnant. And there are tons of subplots in this novel, okay, in addition to us waiting for the outcome of her husband's investigation. So there's a lot going on, but it all ties together beautifully. But in the end, our narrator her behavior just goes completely left. It gets really dark. I'm obviously not going to share it. But, yeah, you know, Vladimir, if I had to, you know, the elevator pitch, literary campus novel. It's about writing. I love the descriptions of the setting. Oh my God, there was so much food in there. It's yeah, it's a literary campus novel. I think that's all I'm going to say on it. Obviously, there's a Me Too element in it. There's sexual misconduct on both their parts in the end. So there's really a lot to chew on. I remember at the Epigraph Literary Festival, that first inaugural festival that I hosted in April, in one of the happy hour sessions, we were talking about the book's cover. And people really didn't like the book's cover. They really didn't. And they're hoping maybe they'll change it for the paperback. I really didn't look into it to see if they did. But I just remember that book having lots of discussion during that festival in April, and people really hated the cover. And to be quite honest, I'm not so sure how I feel about it too. But anyways, that's enough said on Vladimir. But Vladimir by Julia May Jonas is the first book on my top 10 books of 2022. So I hope you'll give it a go. Okay, book 2 is Blood Sugar by Sacha Rothchild. This book came out in April, specifically April 19th. Now again, if you subscribe to the newsletter, if you keep up with the reading guides, this was one of my mystery and thriller selections in the spring reading guide, so spring 2022 reading guide, and it was also on the Minimalist Reads list. I absolutely love this book. It's a delicious thriller. It's a very South Florida, Miami novel. I mean, I absolutely love the setting. And because it's a thriller, obviously, there's not so much I can say. But just know, it's a debut thriller. In the book, we meet Ruby, and we meet a 5-year-old Ruby. And this is right off in the book. It's not a spoiler. We meet Ruby, and she's 5 years old. And we see her holding down a boy. He's 7 years old. His name is Duncan. She holds him down underwater until he drowns. And surprisingly, she doesn't feel guilty. In her eyes, her actions were heroic, and you'll have to read to find out why. Then the novel fast forwards to like 25 years in the future, and we meet Ruby in Miami Beach, but she is in a police interrogation room, and a detective is interrogating her about 4 murder victims, right? One of which happens to be that boy, Duncan, from when she was 5 years old. But she's being arrested, and the reason she's in the interrogation room because she is suspected of murdering her husband. Now again, it's a thriller, so I can't give too much away, right? But you're just going to have to trust me and read this one. I think the author does an amazing job at making us guess about whether Ruby or not is telling the truth. So you have that whole unreliable narrator thing going on. But at the same time, you're kind of cheering for her, you know? You want her to succeed in a weird way. You know, you want her, you want to know what's happening at the end. But yeah, she's one of those complicated, unreliable narrators. Just like I said at the beginning, I think the author did an amazing job with the descriptions in the book. It's very South Florida, very Miami. I really think the author brought it to life. So yeah, give this one a go. I also, in addition to reading, I listened to this one on audio, and this one is really good on audio. So if you're into audiobooks, I think thrillers do really well on audio, just my opinion, and this one was really good on audio as well. So long and short of it is Blood Sugar is a debut thriller, and Ruby's being accused of 4 murders. But she's only guilty of some of them, and you're going to have to read to find out, and you're going to have to read to find out whether or not she's telling the truth. And, you know, you'll all just have to read to find out all that good stuff. So again, it's Blood Sugar by Sacha Rothchild. Okay, book 3 on my list is Fellowship Point by Alice Elliott. Now, this book was published July 5th, so this was a summer book. And again, all roads lead to my newsletter and reading guides. So again, if you're subscribed and if you remember, this was one of the books with themes of family and friendship that I selected for the summer reading guide. It was also one of the books on the summer minimalist reading list for summer 2022. So for me personally, this was a standout book. And the first thing I always say about this book is don't be intimidated by how big it is, okay? It's a beast of a book. It comes in at almost 600 pages. But even with all those pages, it's one of those books you're not going to want to end, you know? It's just, I really enjoyed it. So my elevator pitch for this novel is that in the book, the friendship of two women is tested when they need to decide about a piece of land that they own, a piece of coastal property. They need to decide what to do with it, and through this, long buried memories come to light, secrets come to light, and all that good stuff. So it's really a book about family and friendship, and I really enjoyed it. In the book, we meet Agnes. She's an 80-year-old woman, and I just want to say, I love reading books about women later in life. I really, really do. I mean, don't get me wrong. I appreciate a novel about a 20-something and a 30-something, but I love reading books about women later in life. But anyway, we meet Agnes. She's 80 years old, and right now she's on her, I think, third or fourth breast cancer diagnosis. She's thinking about her life. She's thinking about the legacy she'll leave behind. And I mean, I can understand that's something you're thinking about, especially at that age. But Agnes is also really cool because she's a celebrated children's book author. Like, you know, she's very popular, but she also secretly publishes a series for adults. You know, it's a bit more literary, and those books she writes under a pseudonym. Now, the 5th book in her series is due, but she's going through some writer's block, and Agnes is also going through a period where she's planning to donate some land that she owns with her friend Polly. And this is kind of where, you know, the rifts and the secrets and all that memories and stuff come to light. So her friend, who she owns this land with, that she's planning to donate, she's owned it with her lifelong best friend Polly. And this is also something I love reading about. I love reading about women and the friendships they have with each other. And especially in this instance, it's been a lifelong friendship. So we meet Polly. You know, she's lived a different kind of life from Agnes. She's a married woman. She's well off. She has kids. She's devoted to her family, devoted to her husband. And she's that person who's always trying to create balance in her life. So for someone who's always trying to create balance, when she finds herself, you know, in loggerheads with her best friend Agnes, and deciding what to do with the land, loyalties are tested. So the loyalties to her best friend and trying to honor what her best friend wants. But then it's like also trying to honor what her family wants and the wishes of her sons. But the truth is, like, Polly really needs to answer, what does she want for herself, you know? So if that isn't enough drama, you know, Agnes and Polly have other problems going on too. They are held back by choices that they made in their past lives. And all of this is going to come to light because Agnes, because remember, she's the one who's the writer, her editor is determined to make her write a memoir. So, you know, like having to write a memoir means having to revisit things that have happened in your life and confront certain things. So, yeah, you know, just a lot of things come to life. So again, I think I've shared enough on this. Again, it's entitled Fellowship Point by Alice Elliott. We see two friends, we see their friendship being tested, we see, you know, long buried memories and all that good stuff. And again, it's a great book about women later on in their lives. And I just thought it was beautiful, very well done. And even after reading it, I wanted more. I'm just saying, I wanted more. So again, Fellowship Point by Alice Elliott. Okay, so the next book on my list, number 4, is Sirens and Muses. This is by Antonia Angress, and this book came out in July, specifically July 12th. Again, all roads lead to the newsletter and my reading guides. And if you remember, this was one of my literary fiction selections for summer 2022. This is a campus novel. I love a good campus novel, I have to say. And this is a campus novel with, you know, some literary hints in there. And it's set at a fictional college set somewhere in New England, right? And in the book, we meet 4 people. We meet Louisa, who's a new transfer student coming from the South. She's coming from Louisiana, I think. We meet her roommate, Karina. She's everything Louisa isn't. You know, she's wealthy, she's popular, she's confident, all that good stuff. We also meet Preston, who's a senior, and he's that person who goes around questioning things and whether, you know, a school like this is even relevant in the modern age. And then we meet Robert, who's a teacher, whose career, and, you know, they're all into art, by the way, all these people. But Robert's career was really hot, you know, once upon a time. But we've seen it atrophy, it declined, it's on a decline. So we meet all these four people, right? And we just see how volatile their lives are. We see how much they push themselves, you know, to be the best and so on. And then ultimately something happens, I'm not going to say, but a prank happens, or what is supposedly a prank. And this action just upends all their lives. So this is at the school. Then we meet the characters later on, and we see them trying to make new lives for themselves. They're in New York City, but it's only a matter of time before all four of them, all their lives just happen to converge again. My pitch for this is, it's a book. It's set at an elite art school. We meet four artists. We see their lives being upended. We see them trying to make fresh starts. We see their paths converge again. And we just kind of see where their love for art, their passion, their desires, and their ambition just, you know, collide. So if you're looking for, you know, a campus academia kind of novel, give Sirens and Muses by Antonia Angress a go. Okay, so the fifth book on my list, we're at the halfway point. The fifth book on my list is The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. Now, I love Ashley Winstead. I'm almost sure I recommended In My Dreams I Hold a Knife in my top 10 in 2021. I absolutely loved her, and if I didn't, it absolutely deserved to be there. Well, Ashley is back with a dark psychological thriller, and this one is a bingeable read. I read this one. I also listened to this on audio. If you're a fan of audio, I really think this one is a good one to listen on audio as well. Now, in this book, again, it's a thriller, so I really can't say too much, but we meet a woman called Shay. She's a trophy wife. She's living in Dallas, and she is listening to another podcast episode. It's a true crime podcast called Transgressions, and it's a podcast hosted by her childhood friend Jamie. But in this particular episode, it kind of really hits close to home, because he's talking about investigating the death of Shay's best friend from college, and her name is Laurel, and it is assumed that she was lost to suicide. So there's quite a bit of connection here. Shay's listening to this podcast episode. It's being hosted by her childhood friend, and he's planning to investigate the death of her best friend from college. Now, the podcast host, Jamie, doesn't believe the explanation that the cops are sharing, and Shay, who is kind of currently feeling unfulfilled in her life, whose writing career is stagnant, and who still feels guilty from not being able to save and protect her friends back in college, and she heads to the school to investigate. So we see Shay and Jamie investigating what happened to Laurel, but they end up finding themselves in this underworld of drugs, sex, cults, misogyny, and just a whole bunch of dark things, okay? So this is a really dark thriller. It's a cult thriller, and you know, it has that true crime podcast element. So if you're looking for a bingeable book, if you're an audiobook listener and you're looking for a great audiobook too, I highly recommend that you listen or read The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. Okay, book 6 on my list is Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now, what I loved about Babel is that it has everything I personally love in a book. It has that dark academia element because, again, you know, I love a good campus novel. I think I've recommended a few here on the show. So it has dark academia, you know, that campus vibe. It has a historical investigation element into it that's really discussing some important topics. But ultimately, it's also just a really brilliant fantasy. I love the idea and concept for this world and for this school. So yes, I highly recommend you read Babel. So Babel is set in an alternate version of Victorian England. And in the novel, we meet Robin, a young Chinese boy brought to England. Now, Britain needs foreigners and they need their languages in order to maintain power that they've built upon silver bars and the magical powers imparted to them by translation. So Robin is sent to Babel, which is, you know, alternate world Oxford University. So it's in the book, it's the Oxford Translation Institute. And here, translators hold the key to the British Empire. But at the school, Robin discovers a secret society that's working to dismantle the institution from the inside. And I love the secret society bit. I thought that was really cool. Now, what I loved about Babel is that it was doing two things at the same time. It's a love letter to just words and literature and language and translation, and you can really feel it in the book. But I also appreciated that it was able at the same time to explore inequality, racism, the experience of marginalized folks, colonialism and imperialism. Because again, in order for Britain to maintain power in this world, they need foreigners and their languages and them coming in and doing all this translation, you know what I mean? So I really enjoyed the book. I know it might sound heavy with those really important topics from a historical perspective, but it's also really fun, okay? It's a fantasy and I love the dark academia. I love the setting, especially the descriptions of Oxford and just the university grounds and the surrounding area. And if you're familiar, you know it's really beautiful. If you're not, trust me, it's going to transport you there. My favourite part was when they were talking about the libraries. Of course, as a book lover, it's something I really loved and appreciated. So it's filled with really good stuff. My elevator pitch is dark academia, historical investigation and conversation. But it's also just a really brilliant fantasy and I'm really excited for the next book. So I highly recommend you read Babel by R.F. Kuang. Okay, number 7 on my list of top 10 books of 2022 is The Enigma of Room 622 by Joel Dicker, translated from the French by Robert Bonono. Now, this book was published in September 13th, to be specific. And my elevator pitch for this one is it's a slow burn murder mystery. And it's set at a fancy Swiss hotel. In the novel, we meet an author who is just really upset and reeling from the recent death of his publisher. And he arrives at this really fancy Swiss hotel. And while there, he meets an aspiring author, and together they decide to explore why there's no longer a room 622 at the hotel. So this is all happening 16 years after an unsolved murder. So while investigating the murder that happened way back when, the author is using the material to write his latest thriller. Now, there's other things that happen, but I really don't want to say it to avoid spoiling it. But just know that what I found really interesting, that though this is a work of fiction, there are bits of the novel that kind of come across a bit as autobiographical, as the main character's name in the book is the same as the author whose book we're reading, and the book the author is writing in the novel is also the same as the book we're reading. So just, again, think of this one as a literary murder mystery, literary whodunit. There's lots of twists, there's lots of heart. I really think this one, I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it, but if you're a lover of murder mysteries, if you're a fan of Agatha Christie or something, give this one a go. It's The Enigma of Room 622 by Joel Dicker, translated from the French by Robert Bonono. Okay, book 8 on my list is Shrines of Gaiety by Kate Atkinson. Now, if you subscribe to the newsletter, yes, we're going back to that, and if you keep up with my reading guides, because I do put out seasonal reading guides, so you're going to get 4 seasonal reading guides, 1 for each season, and of course we do a holiday gift guide, but that's separate. But anyway, if you subscribed, if you got the reading guide, if you remember, Shrines of Gaiety was one of my historical fiction selections for the fall of 2022. This book was published on September 27th, and this book takes us back to London post-World War I. And at this time, London has this really big nightlife scene, and at the centre of it is club maven Nellie. I absolutely loved Nellie's character, so it was really cool to know that Nellie's character in the book was inspired by the real life club maven called Kate Merrick. So that was really interesting. So anyway, the novel transports us to London post World War I. We meet Nellie, and she's really successful, by the way. She's really successful. She has an empire of 5 nightclubs, but unfortunately her success breeds enemies naturally, especially at that time. So it's 1926. Nellie is running her empire of nightclubs. She has a diverse clientele. I mean, she has all kinds of people coming there. You know, everyday folk, royalties, celebrity, all kinds of things. What I also loved about Nellie is that she's also a mum, and she's a mother of 6 children. And we meet Nellie, and she's just been released from prison. She was arrested during a raid on one of her clubs. And, you know, there are numerous subplots in this novel. So not only are folks trying to kind of take Nellie down, but there are lots of things going on. I don't want to say, but ultimately all this subplots kind of reveals all the scheming to end Nellie's grip on her 5 clubs. So from family battles to the corrupt police to ghost from her past, you know, Nellie is just this strong woman determined not to crumble. So if I had to say, you know, an elevator pitch on this one, it's a historical novel, okay? It has all its historical elements, but there's also literary bits and there's a pinch of mystery. So I kind of love this great mashup. I love being transported to London post-World War I. I think in the historical fiction space we read a lot of World War II, but this one takes us to post-World War I, and I was here for it, and I just loved all the elements that the author put into this book. I think Kate Atkinson is a really great writer, so if you're open to it, I highly recommend picking up Shrines of Gaiety. Okay, so book 9 on my list is Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. All roads lead to the newsletter again, because if you are subscribed, if you keep up with the reading guides, this was one of my literary fiction selections for fall 2022. Now, I have to be honest, right off the bat, reading this book, it wasn't what I was expecting. But then again, you know, when I think about the author Celeste Ng, I mean, come on, what did I really expect? She's an auto-read author for me. I absolutely loved Everything I Never Told You. I absolutely loved Little Fires Everywhere. So, of course, naturally, I wanted to read Our Missing Hearts. So, this book, let's be very clear, it's a dystopian novel with hints of literary fiction. And it's a book set in an alternate present society where there's intense family separation and there's a lot of violence against Asians and Asian Americans. And this kind of behavior has been increasingly normalized. There is also legislation that allows the government. So this isn't just, you know, random people doing things. And in a true dystopian novel, you know, there's involvement of the government, and in this world, there's legislation that allows the government to reassign custody of children whose parents are accused of being un-American. So in this book, with that backdrop, we meet 12-year-old Bird. Bird lives with his father, who is white, and his mother who is a Chinese American poet, vanished 3 years earlier. And she just vanished around that time when her work started to be seen as really inflammatory, you know? So this woman just disappears out of the blue 3 years ago. But one day, out of the blue, so again, she disappeared 3 years before, so present day, out of the blue, a letter arrives. And because it's addressed to Bird, he knows it's from his mother, because since her disappearance, so since Bird's mom disappeared, he's had to answer to his given name, which is Noah. So because the letter is addressed to Bird, he knows it's from his mom. Now, due to all the violence that's been happening, you know, Bird has always had to really lay low. But after receiving this letter, nothing can stop him for looking for his mom. I'm not going to say too much more about this one, but just know it's one of those cautionary tales like a true dystopian novel can be. It's a cautionary tale, but it's also a family drama. It's an ode to love, the power of art, storytelling, family, just all that good stuff. And so elevator pitch for this book: it's set in a dystopian future, in a society that's just really consumed by fear and the unknown, and we kind of see the love between a mother and her child, and the power of art and storytelling just kind of shine through and prevail despite all these injustices. So if you're a fan of Celeste Ng, again, this is just a must read by her. If you're new to her, I recommend you give this one a go. I really think she's one of those, you know, great standout writers of our time. So I'm highly recommending you pick up All Missing Hearts by Celeste Ng. Okay, so now we're down to the last book, number 10. And number 10 on my list is Sign Here by Claudia Lux. This book was published in October 25th. And if you read the summary of this book, or even just look at the book cover or whatever, you'll kind of have an idea of where I'm going with this. And the first thought that popped into my mind when I was reading this book, and then also just kind of looking back at the cover, it was that old adage, you know, of the devil is in the details. You know how they always tell you that, especially when it comes to just contracts and, you know, all that good stuff. Or even when it comes to purchasing things and, you know, you don't read the fine print on the warranties or whatever. Yeah, the devil is in the details. Well, Sign Here is proof of that. And my elevator pitch for this one is that Sign Here it's an entertaining dark satire. It's murder mystery, but it also meets dysfunctional family drama. And, you know, there's a little pinch of twisty thriller in there as well. Now, in this book, we meet Peyote Trip, and he works in the deals department in hell. Okay, deals department. And his job is to get people to sign away their souls. Okay, so when they say the devil's in the details, remember, we're meeting a character who works in hell. He works in the deals department, and his job is to get people to sign away their souls. In alternate chapters in this story, we meet a family. We meet the Harrison family. And we meet this family as they're going on their annual summer vacation. So there are two kinds of stories going on here. But my favorite bits of this book was I just really loved how the author reimagined hell as this kind of corporation, but it's also a corporate nightmare. And all the employees who work in hell, because we meet some of the employees in hell. We see the boss who is in charge of the workers in the deals department. And what was really creative, in my opinion, is that even though they're in hell, and hell is like this really bad place, they're all living in their own personal hells. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to get into what each person's personal hell is, but I thought that was really well done. I also loved reading about the Harrison family and their dysfunctional family drama, and kind of seeing how both stories kind of come together. Because there is a storyline with the Harrison family and hell. So just kind of seeing how they kind of come together was really interesting. And I really enjoyed it. So it's a murder mystery. There's a multi-generational family. There's a lot of secrets and lies that have been going on over the years. We kind of see it spilling out as they're on their course of the family vacation. And then we also see the guy, Peyote, who works in the deals department in hell. And we also see how he gets humans on Earth to sign over their souls. And we learn what's his incentive to do that. And honestly, I love a good anti-hero story. And that's really what this book is. As I'm talking to you all here, that's really also the other thing that grabs me, because I love a dysfunctional family. I love a murder mystery, but I love an anti-hero too, you know? So I really hope you'll give this one a try. And again, it's entitled Sign Here by Claudia Lux. Alrighty, well readers, those are my top 10 books of 2022. One of my favourite things about books, and I just want to say this before we close the show out, is one of the things I love about books is that books don't expire, okay? So while I've read them in 2022, I really hope you'll consider picking up 1 or 3 of the books I've shared here in 2023 and beyond, because again, books don't expire. And if you're looking for even more books, please check out my top 10 book series that I did on the podcast last year. It's really good. And if you're looking for more books to add to your TBR, I highly recommend you listen. Alrighty, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And I'm looking forward to talking with you again soon. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Reader's Couch podcast. Please subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, and take a few seconds to leave a rating and review. Until next time, stay lounging, stay reading, and whenever you're in doubt, go straight to your local bookstore or library. Thanks again for listening, and happy reading.